Hello everyone, it's great to see you. Welcome back. And before we get started, I'd like to say that if you like the video, please like the video. It means so much to me. And subscribe. I would love to have you join this community. And today, I'd like to talk about this game, Marc Ecko's Getting Up, Contents Under Pressure. Game developed and, well, released in 2006 by a developer called The Collective. And I thought it was interesting. I don't even really mention him here on the front. We just see the publisher Atari, and then of course Ecko, the brand, which used to be in the 2000s at least. I don't know if anymore today, but was a huge brand. Marc Ecko, a very known designer for his style and art, and I guess I don't know a lot about Marc's history, but he had a thing for graffiti. Or maybe he was a graffiti dude. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But anyway, Marc Ecko, I don't know if he prefers Mr. Ecko or Marc Ecko or Mark. I'll call him Mark. He worked with this developer, The Collective. And The Collective is actually known mostly for licensed games. They worked on Men in Black, X-Files, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Star Trek, Indiana Jones. It seemed like if you wanted a licensed game to be made, The Collective was likely an option that was floating a bit out there for that to be done. And The Collective is now part of Double Helix Games, which in similar fashion continues to work on these somewhat licensed titles. And it's a game published by Atari. And I always just love to see Atari at the start of a game. I think there's just something nostalgic and interesting and fun about it. And I feel like every Atari game I see and I play, I end up having a good time. So I can't really complain there. You know, the game doesn't have a very broad development history that I could see. There were a couple missed deadlines, maybe a delay or two, but nothing too significant. And when the game came out, it got mixed or average reviews. So when I was reading just through like the Wikipedia page, some people saying this game is too serious. It's too serious. And some people saying, well, it's missing some polish. But other interesting things, I mean, this came out in 2006, as I mentioned, and I heard recently that they're working on a film for Getting Up, which I'm very intrigued and I want to check out because it's been nearly 20 years since this IP first came to light, and there really hasn't been much outside of Marc saying, hey, we're working on a sequel. That was 10 years ago now. But anyways, enough ranting. I have a long storied history with this because I used to get PlayStation Magazine, and back when the PlayStation 2 was your console option, if you're a PlayStation person, we would get demo discs. And on a demo disc, I had the first level of Getting Up, and I played it a lot. I loved games of its style when it came out. And so as a 12, 13-year-old boy, I was the perfect age for a game of this nature, and I always wanted to buy it, but I never quite did. And so many years ago, I picked this up, and now I've played it through maybe 3 times. I just recently beat it through the 3rd time, and so I just wanted to share my thoughts on it. A game that I anticipated for so many years, getting my hands on it, getting the opportunity to play it. What was my experience like? I just thought I would share those thoughts with you. Before we get into that, I want to share with you this copy of Getting Up, Contents Under Pressure. So this was the standard edition. There was a second limited edition, but I do quite like this box. I don't know if you can see it in the light here. Probably my lighting is making it difficult to see, but there's a nice gloss and kind of sheen to the cover art, which I always kind of like little touches like that on the physical cases. And on the back here, we just get a little bit telling you about what playing this game is going to be like. Tag anywhere, make makeshift weapons. This is Train. And yeah, I mean, that's the game. On the inside here, we have, of course, the game disc. And then a couple little goodies. So I have the registration card for Complex Magazine. Isn't that pretty old school? Magazine subscription. And it says on here, after you finish getting up, check out Complex Magazine, the ultimate guide to the hottest sneakers, apparel, and products for men. And of course, we'll show you one more time. We have Jessica Alba there on the example issue. So yeah, and it looks like if you sign up for a full year subscription, you'll get 6 issues for $6. I don't know. Is that a good deal? It's kind of interesting to think about magazines, because when I was a kid, that was still kind of a thing. And I was just describing to you, hey, I used to get PlayStation Magazine. And those demo discs, I loved them. I'd love to get my hand on some demo discs someday. And we have the manual here. We have Train on the front. That's the main character. And I actually like some of the art throughout the manual. I mean, the first thing I really liked is a lot of the pages are bordered, and they have really neat kind of background pictures. I think it's an appreciation for, attention to detail in a lot of this. And so we get a little bit about the story at the front, and there's a long list of biographies on characters here. They tell you all about the characters, who they are, what their deal is. I'll try to find some interesting ones for you. We have many pages of these. Some of these are pretty cool. So the game features a lot of celebrities. So one of the things they do is in the manual here, they have these kind of biographies about all sorts of the various legends, art legends that they feature in here. And I like Obey down here. I have a couple of Obey pieces in my wardrobe, I guess. Not that I'm a fancy guy or nothing. And then, of course, we get a little bit about some of the things you're going to be doing in the game, how the UI works, or HUD, how you will be doing some graffiti, how you're going to apply graffiti, and some of the various other types of graffiti and things you'll do. And there's a little section for fighting combos, how the fighting kind of works, or at least what buttons you press to engage that. And then, we get some standard credits at the end. So overall, I quite like the manual. It's very nice. The one thing I find funny is a lot of manuals of the time, one of the final pages will be notes. It'll just say notes and it'll be blank. It was usually where I'd write cheat codes for the game when that was a thing as well. And this manual did not have it. All right, I'm gonna get it on the shelf here. And there we go. So let's talk a little bit about the story first. So the game focuses on Train. He's a boy who's, or maybe like a young man, I guess, who's run away from grandma's house to become a graffiti artist. And he's going to become the all-city king. That's his goal. And he first goes to this place called the New Radius Slums. And one of the first things that Train really notices is there's a significant degree of gentrification going on in the New Radius Slums. There is a group called the CCK. They're basically the police, so I'll just call them the police in this game. And they're heavily policing the New Radius Slums, and one of their ultimate goals that the Mayor Sung, has kind of put into place is to destroy liberal arts in the city. We have to get rid of all the expression, and we have to get rid of liberal arts because it's a gateway to crime and violence. That is Mayor Sung's position. Now, the funny thing about the game is you will spend a lot of time doing crime and violence in your pursuit of doing art as well. Not that I'm making a comment there on anything. I'm just saying that I just find that to be a funny aspect of the game's experience. So anyways, when Train gets to the New Radius Slums, he gets into a battle and then ultimately forms an alliance with a group called the Vandals, who are led by this dude Gabe. And they basically ally together to take down Mayor Sung in the CCK. And so over the course of about, I think there's 11 levels in total or so, chapters, you will do exactly that. Take on these missions to do graffiti, become the All-City King, take down the CCK, and expose Mayor Sung for who he really is, as there will be a whole unraveling of a plot with Train's father, the things he did in the past, how Mayor Sung is connected, and how we can take him down. So, one of the things I wanted to comment on is that the game is, in its story aspects, a bit over the top and ridiculous. One of the reviewers said it's too serious, and that was why they had marked down the game. I said that earlier. But in my position, the game was serious in a comedic degree, and what I mean by that is the game, it just truly does take itself so serious. But I personally really appreciated that about it. It seemed very earnest. It seemed very invested in the story that it was telling, and everybody in the game takes it so serious. This idea that like we gotta do graffiti on the walls, and that's going to I don't know, save the city. I mean, economics, gentrification, crime, violence in lower poverty areas of a city. There's so much that one could comment on, but I did kind of appreciate the level that Train and his group took it to. It reminds me of a great Studio Ghibli film, Pom Poko, and it stars tanukis, which are basically, I'll call them raccoons, and it's a story about environmental sustainability and deforestation and things. And anyways, the raccoons' homes are being destroyed, and their idea is, oh, let's put on a spooky ghost show in the city, and it's going to terrify people. But really, people just end up loving this little raccoon parade that they put together, and it really accomplishes nothing. And so when I think of this game, I'm like, okay, well, that's probably the ultimate outcome, right? If we're being serious in terms of its tone, its messaging, and kind of its goals. But I loved it. I found it very endearing. I actually love both that movie and this game in its tone and in its presentation. And so, you feel how you want about that. But I thought it was very fun to follow the twists and turns. And this game really has so many twists and turns. It's like watching a reality TV show sometimes. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. And basically how the story is told is through cinematics, which are tagged onto the front end or back end of any particular chapter that you're working through. And then from those cinematics, you'll kind of get an understanding of what the ultimate objectives of the mission you're playing are going to end up being. I'll say that the cinematics are both acceptable in their voice acting and in their quality, and engaging as well. And one of the things that I liked that we don't see in a lot of games, particularly as it relates to its cinematics, is that Marc Ecko's really, in its cinematic moments, takes the time to kind of think about the visual framing and movement of the camera when characters are doing things. Sometimes the camera will be sideways or upside down or moving around, and I always really appreciate the little touches like that. It really adds a bit of personality and character. And so overall, I remember the story being pretty fun. I don't remember nearly as much about it in this moment as I'm talking, so you can kind of take that for what it is. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? But I have very fond memories of experiencing it. And so not only are you experiencing the story, but you're playing the game. And so let's talk about the gameplay aspects. And so there's a few core aspects of the game that I want to dive into. So each mission, you'll be given a set of objectives, and there will also be some sub-objectives in terms of just kind of collect-a-thon almost aspects of the game, right? And the collect-a-thon aspects here are really just putting your tags and making graffiti along your mission to, do the objective, right? And so exploration and graffiti are a huge aspect of the game. All the levels are kind of sub-open. There's kind of a linear path, but there's a lot of different areas to explore within that linear path where you can find hidden places to lay down graffiti and such. And so I really did like, and I've always liked, kind of sub-open exploration areas. Open world takes it a little too far for me. Linear games, I do enjoy them, but that little bit of freedom to explore around is always quite fun. One of the aspects of it, though, however, is that every level is going to have a lot of optional tags to put up. And this game is limited by its black book. And so what the black book is in this game is Train's collection of all the different pieces, styles of art, types of art that he can do throughout the course of the game. So you'll have your standard graffiti pieces, You'll have stickers, aerosols, roll-ups, marker tags, stencils, posters. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but a lot of these optional tags will have a specific type, and then within that type, in your black book, you can only take with you 3 or 4 art styles for each specific type. And so if you're having to do like big throw up graffiti pieces, and there's 20 of them in a level, and you have 4 options, you're going to run out of those, and it's going to start to feel a little repetitive after a while. And maybe that's just a limitation of what the PlayStation 2 could do at the time, but it is something that over the course of me really trying to 100% the levels in this game, began to feel a little repetitive at times. Though I thought it was still a very cool and useful aspect of the game. I think one thing that would be nice is maybe just to either open that black book up and allow us to have more styles, or trim back the number of optional graffiti tags. I think one of those would have balanced out the gameplay a little more in terms of pursuing these optional items and moving on to the next level as you complete the main objective. And another big thing you'll do in the exploration aspects of the game is platforming, right? You know, sometimes train will be tagging on a wall on the street. Sometimes you have to climb a pole, you know, get up on the train tracks and tag up there. And I really like those aspects of the game. They're very, you know, straightforward. You just jump and climb and whatnot. The controls can be a little sticky at times, and so your jump won't necessarily translate immediately to the animation that train is gonna kind of play out. And so I did find the movement a little sticky at times, though once you kind of get a feel for it, it's really not as bad. I have heard that if you play more modern iterations of this game, I don't know, via the re-release that was done on Steam, or emulated, that sometimes if you have a high refresh rate monitor, that may cause issues with some of the timing for the combat and the exploration. So just something to keep in mind. But I played it on my PlayStation 2. I didn't really have too many issues there. Another big aspect of this game will be kind of having to sneak around at times and run from the police. Again, these are aspects of the world in which Train lives, which drives his kind of goal and mission, right? So encountering the police, if they see you tagging or something like that, they'll try to chase you down. Usually you can just climb away from them or hide in a shadow somewhere and they'll forget about you. But once they have kind of caught on to you for the first time, it is going to be kind of difficult to stay away from them because they're very easy to re-trigger. And if you end up in a combat confrontation with them, it's a real hassle to try to fight them. And we'll talk a little bit about combat here in a minute. But just my experience. However, many of the sneaking sections in which Train, you know, has to kind of crouch around. He puts his hood up, he crouches around, and sneaks past or knocks out enemies. They're pretty minimal. They're pretty scripted, and so it'll make sense when you have to sneak and when you shouldn't sneak. One thing that happened to me a lot in the game is when you walk up behind an enemy, Train will start this animation where he kind of lifts his hands up, and once it gets into position, you can do a sneak attack on an enemy and knock them out immediately. But a big problem is that oftentimes that animation just wouldn't trigger, and you would enter a combat confrontation, which could be frustrating at times. And the reason why is that the combat is honestly pretty clunky. There are very slow and drawn out animations for Train, and Train is limited to his combat options. Aside from a standard kind of 3-button attack, he can roll around on the ground to dodge or pick up items. And I often found when I was trying to roll around to pick up an item that it was kind of hit or miss if I was actually going to pick up the item. And you can also block, but the function doesn't work too effectively against enemies. However, enemies, they block way too often. They block so much. And oftentimes what you'll find yourself doing is pulling off this 1-2 punch kind of motion to get them out of their block, and then you can hit them a couple times and they'll go back to blocking. And even just fighting your standard enemy can take a couple minutes at times. And so I thought that was a little too much. There are also sections in which you will get ganged up on by more than one enemy. And in these circumstances, the enemies are not taking their turns to attack you. They're coming at you from all different directions. And so it can be, you can very easily get ganged up on and very easily get beaten on. So I think it is somewhat reflective of, I'm not saying this was the developer's goal, but maybe it is somewhat reflective of Train's character. I mean, he's a young man. He probably doesn't have a lot of fighting experience. He's just going out there. He's an artist and wants to do graffiti. And unfortunately, he lives in a tough world. And so maybe that's just an aspect of Train and his personality. Though the game doesn't really comment on that, I'm just kind of speculating and ultimately making excuses for its combat. But the combat is something that I feel like there could have been a little more work on. There could have been a little more time in the kitchen for it to get cooked just right. And I think a big part of it is this game just having an overabundance of slow and drawn out animation, which I think in the PlayStation 2 area you see that a lot with some of the 3D games that we got. So overall gameplay, that's your gameplay experience. You go through the objective, you encounter cops, you run away from them, you find all these optional spray tags, you do those, right? And you fight enemies along the way. And overall, I did have a pretty fun experience playing this game, collecting these tags and so on. And it's of its time. It's a 2006 game, but I did have a lot of fun. I can't lie. It was enjoyable and engaging, and yeah, that's a big part of what I wanted to say about the gameplay itself. Talking about graphics, again, it's a 2006 game. Nothing in particular stands out too much to me in the technical side of the graphics department. One of the things I did want to comment on is you would hope this game would have a nice art style, a nice presentation, and from the moment the game boots up, when you're going through the loading screens and it's taking you through a subway station, and you're playing the game and you're looking around at these kind of slummy urban areas and things, I really love the art style. I love the presentation of the game. And so, that continues to be something that I appreciate a lot about it. And because it has such a strong and nice art style and presentation, I think that even today, as the game has been brought to new platforms, the game continues to age well. Because as we get higher res versions of it, it seems like the texture work, the art especially, continues to also look crisp and fresh and colorful and engaging. And so I was really happy to see that when I was kind of just preparing for this video and watching some gameplay from the newer PC versions and things like that. It was very cool. And so the last big thing to talk about then is the sound. One of the things that's always stood out to me, and in this moment even, I can stand here and I can hear it in my head, is this game's great theme song. Just go find it, boot it up. It plays during a trailer in the opening cinematic for the game, but I can hear it and I really like that song. Just wanted to say that. But the playlist at large is fantastic. It is a great spread of hip hop, blues music, so on and so forth. And it's really what's going to be up and out playing when you're running around and doing objectives and things like that. And so it was important that this game had a great soundtrack, and it really does. It has a great spread of music. On the opposite side, the voice acting, while I did say it was good, the quality of it is quite low. It's kind of crunchy, and it doesn't really sound all there. I wish we got higher quality versions of the audio, because it sounds like it was hitting a limiter somewhere in the music mixing process, or the audio mixing process, and maybe perhaps was a little compressed and some of the highs were missing as well. And so unfortunately, when you are watching these pretty effective cinematics, it's paired with this unfortunate low quality audio. And you kind of get the same thing for sound effects. I think the graffiti spraying sounds pretty good, but when you're taking a weapon, you're fighting enemies, you're swinging them, you kind of just get this like, wonk, kind of, it doesn't sound like that at all, but I don't know if it really sounds like somebody taking a 2x4 and hitting a guy in the face with it. for instance. So, but yeah, overall, there are also some cool kind of sound effects themselves happening. If the music is playing overhead and you're spraying, and you go into more of an attentive detail when you're spraying the tag, you'll hear kind of a low pass get added to the sound, so you just hear like the low sides of the music. And it really kind of adds to this nature of like, yeah, I'm really focusing on spraying this tag. And I didn't comment on it too much, but the tag spraying itself is pretty straightforward. I mean, you just take the can and you choose the stencil. When you go up to the wall, it'll let you choose, and then you can start spraying it. And then you just kind of walk back and forth and spray up or down or left or right. I guess there's a couple styles you could take to do it. And you want to be careful not to spray too much in the same area. You're going to get drips. So yeah, I mean, that's Marc Ecko's Getting Up, Contents Under Pressure. I had waited many years from the time I first played the demo disc, forgot about it for a while, came across it again, bought it, played it another time, and then played it another time again. And so all of these aspects of the game I thought were pretty solid, right? The story is pretty good. It's a little over the top at times. It's quite funny when you think about the meta of the story. The gameplay can be clunky. You have some fun exploration, some fun ideas with the graffiti and stuff, paired with some middling combat, I would say. And the game still holds up visually to this day, especially with this strong art style and with its really good soundtrack. And so I think it is a game still worth checking out, still worth playing, whether on the PlayStation 2 or some of these new versions you can get on PC or emulate or whatever. I had a lot of fun with it, and I would have loved to see a sequel, because if there was an opportunity to take some of the ideas that this game employed in its gameplay and in its style, and get a new team to look at them and to enhance them and bring something to a new generation of consoles that has a similar theme, a similar vision, similar gameplay style, I think the game still to this day could be relevant and fun and quite successful. So if Marc is out there working on a sequel still, or working on this movie, or just trying to get this IP going, I think that's cool, and I'll be there to kind of support those efforts as well. And so am always curious, if you've played the game, what were your thoughts? And did you kind of share similar thoughts to me? Or if not, would love to hear that, of course, as well. And on top of that too, I always really appreciate you tuning in, watching the video, and hearing what I have to say about it. So thank you so much for that. Alrighty, I look forward to seeing y'all next time. And until then, take care. Thanks.